Okay, welcome everyone. It is now noon. I'm so glad everyone is here today. I'm Jamie. I am with Metro Council, and a little bit about us. We are a collaborative of all the community mental health centers in the Kansas City Metro. So with that encompasses Johnson County Mental Health Center, um, Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network, SWOPE Health Services, University Health Behavioral Health, Rediscover Mental Health, Comprehensive, and then Beacon Mental Health Center. And then we also have a couple of others that are not mental health centers, but definitely encompass the Metro. So Mental Health America, the Heartland, and then Center for Behavioral Medicine. And with all of us, we encompass Metro Council. And so we do trainings such as this. So free webinars, second and fourth Thursday of the month from 12 to 1. We also provide other educational opportunities. One that we have coming up is the Mental Health KC Conference. We are so excited. Please save the date, May 23rd and 24th. It is now, registration is live. It's now up. And it is an incredible conference. We have a new location this year at Johnson County Community College. We're so excited to be partnering with them. We have more space, more opportunity, and we're ultra excited. We'll have 2 national keynote speakers, 70 breakout sessions, and tons of opportunity to network, to get information from sponsors, and we hope that you all can join. So I will put it in the chat. It's to register, it's through mentalhealthkc.org, and I'll put that in the chat in just a few minutes. But with this, we have our incredible webinar today. I'm so excited to introduce Kathleen and Tim. But before I do, just a couple little housekeeping things. So we are on Zoom webinar. So what that means is that you are only able to see the presenters, not yourself. You will be able to, though, to communicate through the chat box or through the Q&A. And then at the end of our time together, I will put in a link and a password for you to get a certificate of attendance. So, and we always say this, little disclaimer, I do always find it kind of ironic when we have our community mental health centers as part of this, because we are the Metro Council, but the views and opinions presented are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Metro Council. So with that, I am so excited to introduce Kathleen and Tim. So I'm going to give you guys just a brief little bio for both of them. So Kathleen Harris McKune is the CEO and co-founder of TeamTech. And Kathleen's professional passion is to help organizations move their people and ideas into action. And an expert facilitator, she's been helping teams and organizations, big and small, identify and reach their goals for over 30 years. Kathleen's study and writing on trauma and resilience began in April 2017 when she had an aha moment when she realized that ACEs and the neuroscience of trauma explain the abusive childhood home she and her sisters had grown up in and their continuous stream of chaotic health conditions and chronic health conditions. The Harness sisters captured their resilience journey in their 2019 book, Remarkably Resilient Community Matters, and have been speaking, listening, learning, and helping other adult survivors ever since. And Tim DeWeese. Tim is the director of Johnson County Mental Health Center. The Mental Health Center is the department of Johnson County, Kansas government and employs more than 400 staff who provide behavioral health services to nearly 12,000 community residents annually. Tim possesses a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from Missouri Southern State University and a Master's of Social Work Administration degree from the University of Kansas. He's a licensed mental health professional in Kansas and has over 30 years of experience in community mental health, where he has worked at various capacities, and he possesses extensive knowledge and experience in the public mental health delivery system, client-centered leadership, and program design and development. And then also Tim has served more than 10 years as a commissioned officer in the Army Reserve and National Guard. So with that, I am so excited to present Kathleen and Tim.
Thank you very much, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for taking time to join us today. I'm going to go ahead and screen share so that you can see our PowerPoint. And we can, I think, Tim, move pretty quickly through our opening ones with that wonderful introduction. Tim and I are here to talk to you about Remarkably Resilient Together. It's a community awareness campaign that our two organizations are partnering on to bring to the general public those important pieces, two of the important pieces of being resilient. That is learning to regulate your emotions and also to practice self-care. We normally do our introductions here, Tim. I think that was done well. So I think we'll go over to share a little bit about why this campaign is so important. And Tim, I'm going to let you start this piece.
Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate that. I really the why is pretty self-explanatory. However, one of the things when I've had the opportunity, and I've had the fortunate opportunity to work with Kathleen over the last decade as the director of Johnson County Mental Health Center. And during that time, I've learned a lot from her. And as we have worked together, we really wanted to talk about the importance of emotion regulation, self-care, and kindness. And so I want to just kind of set the stage just briefly. From my standpoint, some of the most pressing issues within our communities are, and I'm just going to throw out a few of them, the epidemic of loneliness and increased deaths by suicide, a vision of perfection or a pressure to succeed. And what I mean by that is really how we ignite young people's passion to drive for success. But perhaps at the same time, we don't provide them the tools necessary to regulate their emotions, to care for themselves, and to manage the failures or stressors or barriers that they may exist during their life. The next is the absence of civility and increased microaggression and bullying. The increased acceptance of drug and alcohol use, in particular, the acceptance of underage drinking. And then finally, the negative impact of unregulated social media and technology. All of these things impact our lives each and every day, in addition to a number of other things. And when I met Kathleen and talked with her about working together on Remarkably Resilient, one of the things that she said to me was, Tim, I want to change the world. And I said, I'm game. Let's do that. And what we've come to the conclusion is that really the way that we change the world is that we change the culture, and that we can do that one person at a time. Because if one person begins to think about the things that we're going to share with you today, and you choose to live your life that way, then you begin to influence the sphere around you. And around you, the people that mean the most to you. And so I think that's how you change a culture. That's how you see community change happen. And so there's really no rocket science in that. It's really about making a decision, making a choice. And I believe that there are actually two things in particular that each of us can do to change our community and make it better. The first is that we simply need to choose to be kind. In a world filled with hate, what we have to understand is that is a learned behavior. Hate, aggression, microaggression, bullying, all learned. And we can counteract that by choosing to learn and choosing to be kind to one another. And so what we know is that kindness actually requires a higher state of mental capacity. So we have to choose to be kind. And so kindness matters. The second thing is that we must regulate our emotions. And I talk with folks about this quite a bit. I was speaking with a number of educators this morning. And the fact is that young people are going to take their cues from us. If we are unable to regulate our emotions, then we can't be surprised when the young people in our lives or the people around us aren't able to regulate their own emotions. So in a world where we encounter so many things beyond our control, it's important that we control the one thing that we can control, and that's ourselves and our emotions. We must be intentional about how we choose to respond to each situation, not react emotionally, but how we choose to respond in each individual situation. It's by doing these two things that I think we can then begin to impact the people around us, impact the sphere of our influence, and ultimately help Kathleen change the world. Now, before I let Kathleen go, I think there's also one other thing that I want to mention, and that's that hyphenated word there called self-care. We can talk about this all day long, and we can say that we're going to choose to be kind, and we can say that we are going to work to regulate our emotions. But first and foremost, we must take care of ourselves. It's imperative that we take the time and that we develop the practice to take care of ourselves, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in all aspects of our life that promotes health and wellness. And while I think sometimes many people view this notion of self-care as maybe selfish or self-indulgent, it couldn't be further from the truth. In order for us to demonstrate these things, we have to be healthy. We have to have our resilience cup full. And we need to be able to demonstrate, model how we take care of ourselves in order to take care of people around us, whether that be at work, within your profession, or within your family and your community. And so I'm really happy to be able to be here with Kathleen today and talk about Remarkably Resilient and the tools that have been developed to help us regulate our emotions and care for ourselves.
Thank you, Tim, very much. I want to share, I echo everything Tim said about why, and then I want to introduce you in this slide to my younger sisters. They're identical twins, Karen and Sharon. And already in the introduction, you have a little sense of how did this facilitator, and my sisters were both IT recruitment individuals, how did we end up starting to talk about the neuroscience of trauma? Well, it was very much when I first ran into this science. I remember calling my sister Karen on the way home from a meeting, and I said, "Oh my goodness, I know why now. I know why, and I'm starting to understand how." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I understand why each of us girls have had so many chronic health conditions over the years. Seems like every other year somebody had one. And I'm starting to see little pieces of how was it that we were able to break our multi-generational cycle of incest, abuse, and neglect in our paternal family. We know that we were supposed to be the fourth generation to hurt our children, and we did not. And so that really set me on a journey to understand the neuroscience, do as much reading as I can, and for Sharon and Karen and I to start to document our story. And we ultimately came down to there are 4 R's of resilience, with really a 5th that underlies in the book, and that is the power of relationships. You all know the importance of just one caring, loving adult relationship. Each of us sisters know who that was, and it was an employer in our small community. Response, understanding, in this case, our coping mechanisms and asking as adults, are they still appropriate? Recovery, which is a lifelong journey. It is not it's just forever. And then regulation, a term we had never, ever heard. And so decided through this Remarkably Resilient Together to approach the Mental Health Center, ask for a team of folks to review the work that we had done, the materials we put together, and first open up to the general community what neuroscience, the neuroscience of trauma has taught us about, as Tim has already said, the importance of emotional regulation and practices of self-care. So that's kind of our why. We all know trauma is certainly a part of the world. Stress is everywhere. And so resilience and learning these at least beginning two pieces that, as Tim said, are ones we can control. Those help us weather life's ups and downs and do that in a way that is a win-win in our relationships. Do it in a way that can project, as Tim said, kindness. And we love this mantra. We are all more resilient when we are regulated and we have full resilience cups. So what this is, the campaign includes, and we'll give you an opportunity, we're going to kind of look inside of it, but it contains a reflective journal, which has some information on the neuroscience of trauma, talks a little bit about ACEs, the history of this, but really puts a downbeat on here's the impact of emotional dysregulation on your health. And then we created 2 decks of cards, and we're going to give you a chance to see kind of a preview of those 52 techniques for what we call in the moment, so regulation, and 52 practices of self-care. And those cards are called Overtime. This gives you a little bit of the thread, the silver thread that winds through each of the decks. Whether you're in the moment for regulation, you'll find the ideas follow the 4 C's. So ideas for care, for calm, for courage, and connect. And those same 4 C's will flow through the deck of cards called Overtime for self-care. So some things that are caring, calming, courage, and connect that help you feed your soul, bring you joy. And it's in those that we thought, 12 years from now, if you lose your card deck, you don't have them anymore, perhaps folks will remember and will have practiced emotional regulation enough that they'll create their own, and you'll create your own techniques for regulation and self-care, thinking about those 4 C's. We want to let you know that we developed this in accordance with the neuroscience of trauma. It utilizes evidence-based practices of journaling and self-reflection, and of course, deeply grounded in our lived experience. So we're going to just take you inside the journal. I'm going to do this pretty quickly because we want to get to the cards. And I know a lot of you, this is very familiar information. For some people, though, it's new. I volunteer out at the Johnson County Corrections Therapeutic Community, and that is wonderful 4 to 6 month treatment program, substance use treatment program for incarcerated individuals. And I right now work with the women and walk them through this idea of ACEs, right? That started the journey of us looking at the neuroscience of trauma, and that is adverse childhood experiences. And a handful, I would say about 50-50 of those that have heard of ACEs and those that have not. And then adding to it that adverse community environments, which we know can add trauma to individuals. And back to the whole idea of just being more aware that people's backgrounds, people's experiences, environments that they came up in very much shapes the way they respond, the way they react. And we often say, when I work with the women, and Sharon and Karen and I say, we didn't choose what happened to us, and we wouldn't choose what happened to us, but it happened. And it is our job to learn to manage it. And I think that's the message that resonates a lot of times with individuals that can get sometimes stuck in those things that have happened and figuring out, how do I get out of that? Well, it's getting the tools and techniques and help and recovery that you need to be able to get through those things that happen to you. Regulation and self-care are 2 of those pieces. Trauma, this is how it's defined by SAMHSA. It's that event, it's how you experience it, and it's the effects that you feel on it. So the same event can be very different experience and a very different effect on different individuals. So trauma is unique to the individual. We know that it's underneath many things that are our physical conditions. So we listed here that chronic disease, mental illness, lower life potential, substance and addiction, even a shortened lifespan. They have linked to the presence of and constant trauma and toxic stress. But this really important question of flipping what's wrong with you to what happened to you. I do want to pause here, and Tim, you feel free to jump in here if you'd like to, but really that human stress response, this was what was so telling to my sisters and I, and that is you do understand when there is a life-threatening situation, the bear is walking in the room, your body is going to go into fight, flight, freeze, or appease, and your body is going to either start to rev up as it puts cortisol and it's putting it's putting adrenaline and it's getting you ready to fight or flight with that bear. Sharon and I, my sister and I are that most of the time. You're not always all the time, but when we get under that human stress response, Sharon and I tend to fight or flight. Karen tends to freeze or appease. So her body starts shutting down. She goes quiet. She withdraws. And it was harder for people to see that because she's the quiet one. Sharon and I were the loud ones. And so this is an important human stress response. The challenge is for many of us, we can get triggered. That is, we're not in that threatening situation anymore, but we get a reminder. And our body starts to go into that fight, flight, freeze, or appease. Learning to recognize those signs and how it shows up in you, and then using an emotional regulation technique to come back down or come back up, depending upon if you're like Sharon and I are more like Karen, but to come back into that more normal kind of rhythm of human stress response, as opposed to that which causes your body to put in excess cortisol and adrenaline you don't need right then. And again, that's not good for your long-term health. Defining terms, emotional regulation, we've talked about that. You manage your emotions so they don't manage you. Triggers, those sensory reminders that cause you to go back to a situation that was in fact emotional for you, perhaps even life-threatening for you. And dysregulation, that ongoing inability that you get stuck in, I call it my overdrive, or Karen gets stuck in that withdrawal and you don't even recognize it. In fact, for 55 years of my life, before I learned about this, I thought I was just a quick to temper person and I was just born that way. And that's how I was in my personal life, not professional, because work was a refuge for all three of us girls, but in my personal life. And Sharon thought the same thing. And Karen thought she was just always going to be the quiet one. But then we recognized, no, this was a stress response reaction to our environment at home that we then carried with us until we recognized, wait a minute, this is not healthy. We need to figure out how to mitigate that. And then we talk a lot about empathy-based trauma. My sister was an ER tech, also was a volunteer on the ambulance. And so she really can relate to this vicarious secondary and compassion, or trauma and compassion fatigue. And certainly, Tim, as you think about your organization, these empathy-based traumas are there and very much there. Do you want to come off mute? This might be something you want to talk a little bit about, Tim.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that's something that's really important as we talk about self-care, that, when we think about ourselves and we are in the helping profession, many times we have experienced vicarious trauma. We've experienced secondary trauma. We experience compassion fatigue. And the way that we can mitigate that is one, not waiting till it gets so bad, but that we routinely, by practice, allow ourselves to self-care, so that we make sure that we are looking out for ourselves, maybe that we're also looking out for our colleagues, that we are making sure that we refer to this as a couple different times, that resilience cup stays full. Because as a provider of care, every time you help someone, you empty that cup just a little bit, just a little bit, and just a little bit. And before you know it, if you have not refilled that cup, then you are empty. And that is when bad things begin to happen for individuals. And so I think we talk about it, and as a supervisor, as the director of the mental health center, I can talk about these things, but I also need to make sure that my actions and my behaviors are consistent with what I tell people. So if I tell people that we need to self-care and that you need to take time off, that you need to be doing things that you enjoy, yet all I'm doing is working and nobody ever sees me having fun, or no one ever sees me taking time off, then I'm really not sending the message as a leader that I would want to send. And so I think it's important that each of us, because from my belief, and I got this from Kathleen as well, is that we're all leaders. A leader is not, is not a position or a title, but it's how you choose to work with the people around you to get work done. And in doing that, then you as a leader can demonstrate to the folks around you that self-care is important. So it starts with you. And you have to do that, make sure that resilience cup is full. But be aware that vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, and compassion fatigue are very real things.
Yes, thank you, Tim, for that. And then just reminding us that stress is a different thing than trauma. Stress can be a whole degree of things. We love this slide from Harvard University Center on Developing Child. Just positive stress, things that challenge you, things that push you and help you learn, change, and grow. Those are normal parts of being humans. Tolerable stress is that stress level that's up a notch. And what happens here is it's serious, but it tends to be temporary, or we hope it's temporary. If it's not, it goes into that toxic stress. And that having support systems helps you manage that tolerable stress. So you lose a loved one, and there's that period of time that's so difficult, and having that support system around you to help you through that. And then toxic stress is often interchangeable with trauma. That's that long activation we talked about of the human stress response. And you don't have a support system that you need. We've talked a little bit about triggers and dysregulation, but we want you to take a moment now and think about yourself. When you find yourself where you maybe have been triggered, or you notice that you're getting anger quickly or you're withdrawing, we want you to think about, is that really the best version of yourself when you're in that survival mode when you don't need to be? And what does that look like and feel like for you, so that you begin to develop that recognition or that awareness skill in yourself, that noticing that folks that work in the mindfulness area will talk about it as. So I notice, I recognize, I'm aware when I'm starting to get triggered or dysregulated. I like to think about this one as you're driving in traffic. We've all been there, and that person cuts you off. And the dysregulated individual that maybe goes up on the high side, I can tell you what I used to look like, was the one that I may or may not honk, but I certainly said a few words in the car, and I might have been like, I can't believe her, and got quickly fired up. And that fired upness maybe even stayed with me, so that my son who's in the car saw it. And if he said something, I might even snap at him because I'm in that dysregulated state. Today, when I get cut off in traffic, if it frustrates me, I actually don't let it anymore. I just take a breath and I think, I hope they get there safely. And what I want my now great nieces and great nephews to experience is that it's a calm person, assuming best intent, hope they get there safely. It's obviously something that they're in a hurry, and I don't need to have that overreaction. That has taken me 6 years in practicing regulation to come off of that dysregulated state that I came out of in my childhood home, and stayed with me through my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, until I really started to learn more about what it meant to run super high strung all the time at home. And this is what it looks like. So we do like you to take a minute and think about, are you more that hyper arousal, like Sharon and I, So hyperactive, hypervigilant, you have anxiety, panic, rage, it could be mania. That's what it feels like when you get dysregulated, you get triggered, that person cuts you off in traffic. Or more like my sister Karen, who is hypo, that is, goes into that disconnection, that numbness, that withdrawal, harder to see, also just as challenging for your immune system to be able to handle as your body's shutting down on a regular basis. So this brings us to the journal and using the journal and the cards together. We like to have this as an exercise, a chance for you to take a look at. We're going to show you 8 of the cards in the regulation. So that is in the moment cards. And the journal process actually asks you, after it goes through that kind of content that we highlighted today, to develop this kind of process. So recognize when you're triggered. So it may just be an instantaneous thing, happens in the grocery store, happens with a certain smell, or you may actually be hanging out in dysregulation. You're kind of stuck there for a bit. So just know your signs, know what that looks like, what it feels like to you, so you recognize it. Then communicate, if you're able, what you're experiencing. So this is upsetting to me. I need a moment. My 23-year-old son and I will say to each other, I'm dysregulated. I need to step away. And we step away and do a regulating technique where we used to have these explosions that happened because we both were dysregulated. And I thought I was being the parent and not backing down. And what I realized is, no. I was teaching my son dysregulation. And instead, we need to come back. And the other part of that dysregulation that's so important, and I know a lot of you know this brain science, so when you're dysregulated, you can't get to that thinking part of your brain. You're in your emotional brain. And we don't necessarily say and do good things when we're just in the emotional brain. We need that balance that the frontal lobe will give us. And so I always remember I got to access my thinking brain, which requires me to go regulate, and then for my son and I to come back and have an adult conversation about what happened and how we need to deal with it. And then we went to regulate. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, so I was going to say that I think that it's really important to point out a little nuance that you shared that I think it's very meaningful, and that is that emotional state. When you're in or experiencing, or where you're triggered and you start to become dysregulated and you become emotional, you tend to then be reactive to situations. And so what we've talked about is that we really want to be intentional and thoughtful about how we respond to situations. For me, and as Kathleen was sharing that story, for me, one of the times that that has been brought to my attention is that when I'm very passionate about the work that we do at the Mental Health Center, I'm very passionate about the work that we do across our community and across the metropolitan area. But that when I'm speaking with funders or when I'm speaking with elected officials, and there tends to be maybe an ignorance or a misunderstanding about how important some of these things are, I can begin to feel myself begin to get emotional. And what ended up happening is that because I was reacting to what they were saying, I was coming off as defensive, aggressive, and the message that I was trying to portray got totally lost. So when we're in this state of heightened emotion, when we're dysregulated, we are not the best communicators. And so it's an opportunity. So as we begin to talk about the cards, and I'll be happy to share my experience about how I have done this and been able to, okay, I'll lead us right into that. Thank you. So one of the things that I have done is that when I go and speak to our Board of County Commissioners, I typically have my book. And if you see there's a card at the top there. And if I begin to feel myself getting to that emotional state where I start to get dysregulated, and I can tell that because I start getting flushed, I can feel the heat in my face. I have this card, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And this is one of the in the moment cards. And it says, and I'll just take a peek down, slow down, pause, and make a choice about how you want to respond. And for me, that is, in essence, a way for me to be able to stay grounded or to ground. Another way that I do that is I'll have something in my hand if I'm presenting or if I'm talking to someone that could elicit an emotional response that I'm passionate about. I'll have something in my hand. In this case, it's a little hope rock. I also have a coin that I carry a lot of the times, and I'll just sit there and rub it. But it's really, for me, it's a way to stay grounded and not be then engaged in that emotional dysregulation and actually really becoming reactive as opposed to being thoughtful and responsive.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Tim. And that's what would love for you to do next. We're going to show you 8. We weren't able to get all 52 of the cards right on a slide, but we thought, let's take 8, 2 that are in the care category, 2 in the calm, 2 in courage, and 2 in connect. And see, as you read through this, if you might be kind of pulled toward one that you thought, you know what, if I did that, I would find that calming or regulating. And so we're going to give you a moment to do that. And for those of you that feel comfortable, if you'd like, in the chat, you could even put the one that you selected and say why you selected it. Might be something that you have used before. You already have it in your back pocket. Might be a version of something that you do. Might be something completely new. But when you take a moment and go ahead and do that, you feel like it is calming, it's soothing, it could help you get grounded and out of that more emotional state that you might get in or that you do get in when you get dysregulated or triggered. So I'm going to go quiet for just a minute, let you take a look at those. And then see if there's one that speaks to you. All right, hopefully you found one. Feel free you can take a screenshot as well. But a chance to pick up one of these, tuck it in your back pocket, and maybe be able to use it as Tim described, or as I described, with a family member or in your work environment.
I know in the chat we have a couple that have popped up, and one of the things Jennifer shared that she likes the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that she frequently uses that with some of her clients. And I think that's exactly, we make these available at the Mental Health Center. We make these available to our staff, but we also make them available to our staff to be able to utilize with clients as well. So thanks for sharing that, Jennifer.
That's great. I think we're starting to see a number come in the chat. Thank you all with those. The connect with nature. Oh yes, I teach and use most of these myself. I like the care card and thinking about something funny. Humor is just a wonderful way to help us all take a little break, right? Break that emotional brain connection, help us get back in our thinking brain. Love these. Yes, temperature. My son does that. My son loves to like stick his head out a really cold window if he's feeling anxious or starting to get hyped up. That's a great one. Thank you for that, Laura. It's a wonderful one. And it is one of the other cards that you'll run into. Yeah, Carol, I can do this. Back in nature, connect with nature, breath work. Yes. Oh, thank you for all those. If we were in a room together, we'd have you talking and sharing with each other. So thank you for doing that through the chat. Super appreciate it. And hope that you find and could find these helpful in lots of different situations. I think we'll go, Tim, if it's okay, to the next one. So that's the regulation, a sample of 8 of the cards, always hoping that people can connect with a handful of those. We want to talk now about self-care, and Tim really set the stage that self-care is often something that we just don't think we deserve. And I'll tell just a brief story. I'm not going to go into any detail, but 2021 was a tough year for me. I experienced 4 very significant traumas in 2021, and I've been the little energizer bunny of our family. No matter what was happening, what was going around, from age 5, I ran the family, I ran the household, and nothing ever took me down, ever, 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 ever. And then it did. And I didn't think I could get back up. And I'm a very resilient human. And luckily, I reached out. My team, I call them now, got all kinds of people on my wonderful team came. And one of the people that I talked with was Tim. And I will never forget. And it's what really brought this to life for me. And he said this at the beginning, you know, Kathleen, you let your resilience cup run low. If you grew up in a home at all like I did, self-care didn't matter. And if you were sitting around, you were a target. And so you were constantly moving, constantly out in the community, constantly at work, constantly away from home. And self-care didn't even register. And suddenly I realized when Tim said that that's what self-care is for, is that I did have an empty resilience cup. It's not something I ever thought about or ever registered, because I had never fallen over before. I had never felt so frazzled, unable to even move forward at all. And that was my aha moment. And self-care now is essential. I schedule it. Sometimes I have to reschedule it because a client thing comes up, and I am an entrepreneur and clients are a very top priority. But then I reschedule it and I make sure that I take that time to care for ourselves. So for those of you that might have come through or might think that self-care is just something extra, it is vital, and it does help us be more resilient. It's that old adage, if I care for myself, I can then care for others. So we want you to think for a minute, like, what does a low or empty resilience cup feel like to you? And just kind of imagine those moments that you know that you have just drained, took a lot of withdrawals, or somebody took a lot of withdrawals. And then the opposite, what does that full resilience cup look like, right? That chance where you've put some things in there, you've taken the time to do things that bring you joy, things that feed your soul. And that gives you an opportunity to then again develop that awareness, that noticing muscle, that you begin to say, I am getting there and I need to take some time for my own self-care so that I can get that resilience cup added to. So we're going to talk, let's see, there we go. Again, in the journal, in the Remarkably Resilient Together materials, we try to teach individuals not only the 4 C's, but also this process of recognizing, in this case, depletion, communicate, share. You know, I'll say to my husband, I've got to go down and, you know, do the treadmill. And it's something that I want to do. I travel the world on our treadmill. We have an iFit, and I travel the world. And I can't wait to, I just finished a trek to base camp in Everest. It's so exciting, which I'll never do, but I got to do on the iFit, right? Then you do the self-care, and then you notice what happened. What does this allow you to do when you're able to have a full resilience cup? And so we'll do the same exercise, and that is give you a moment to look at 8 of the overtime cards, 2 in the care category, again, 2 in calm, 2 in courage, and 2 in connect, and see if there's one that speaks to you. One that you say, you know, I'm going to tuck that in my back pocket and make that more of a regular practice, or it's something that you already do, and make as a regular practice, because you know it feeds your soul. And we'll let you share some of those that speak to you in the chat again. I know Tim is watching that. Thank you for that. Super appreciate it. And give you a moment to select one. And again, share if you're comfortable doing that in the chat. Tim, anything coming in there we want to watch or share? I'll let you come off mute.
Yeah, right off the bat, asking for help card really does take bravery, and sometimes that it can be really hard to summon up that courage to ask for help. But I think that's really a good reminder. For me, it's something that I wish I may have learned early in my career, because I might not have made the mistakes that I've made over the years, if I would have actually listened to people telling me that I needed to take care of myself. So, and then asking for help when you need it. Walking outside, ask for help when you need it. Let's see. Ask. Wow. Ask for help, but it's hard, and I will push myself. Find that noticing stories that I'm telling myself and changing that to other good options. Again, walk outdoors and reframing the self-talk. So a lot of really good examples.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm going to share with you one of the reflections. Well, actually, I think we've got him in a minute, that the women at the TC had regarding these cards. This is underneath everything we do. I tell, and Tim knew Joel right. Sometimes we get really, really lucky in our lives. I got really, really lucky in that I found a business partner that we built the business together. Joel was a mentor, he was a colleague, he was a business partner, but really more than anything, he was that father that I never had. He was that safe, caring, loving male adult relationship that I could trust, I could learn from, I could journey with, I could learn to let down all my walls and steelness that I had created over the years. And one of the things that Joel taught me, and I know that Tim feels the same, is the power of being a reflective human. That is that taking that time, building that capacity to pause, step back, and think about the event, the experience, the interaction, whatever just happened. And it's in that pause that we as humans uniquely learn to change, to grow, take in new insights. And so throughout everything that TeamTech has always done, my firm and Remarkably Resilient Together builds on it, is help people build that reflective capacity. And that's part of what the journal, the questions in the journal, and then there's a section that's, we have a green section where you can go through that recognize, communicate, practice, and then notice, a blue section where you do that with overtime, and then a yellow section, because Joel would say, I can hear him now, you really have to take time to then do that second level reflection. That is, step back and look at your journey of learning about and practicing regulation, and look at your journey of being more mindful of filling your resilience cup, and do that periodically so you can celebrate the distance you've come. I celebrate when my son and I are able to separate now, come back as thinking adults later, and deal with a difficult subject. That is not something that I did before. It's something I've learned through practice. I celebrate that, and we really encourage folks through reflective capacity to do that.
I think that's one of the things that when we started talking about this whole idea of having the cards, that it wasn't even a second thought to have a journal. And I know that a lot in our field of practice, we talk a lot about journaling. But one of the things that, and I would agree, and I had the opportunity to work with Joel and feel the same way as Kathleen does. But he would challenge you that if you're not where you want to be, the way to get where you want to be is to reflect on where you've been, and that there's no way to move forward in the future without taking a look at your past. And so, I can remember several times where we would be wanting to just kind of drive forward, and he would put the stops on, and say, "Hey, wait, before we move on to the next thing, let's reflect upon what we just talked about." That really provides the opportunity for you to learn, change, and grow as a human being. It's an opportunity for you to have your resilience cup filled. And I think that whether that be based on your own reflection or reflecting with people that are around you that provide you some positive attributions or thoughts. So I think that's really important that we build that reflective capacity in anything that we do.
And then this is just some feedback we've gotten. I wanted to share because these really touched my heart. One, thank you for giving a name, dysregulation, to feelings I have had all my life and for giving me ways to manage those feelings. I have to say that's exactly how I felt when I went into regulation. And then I loved this one. I always thought of self-care as something I need money for. Your cards gave me lots of free self-care. I'm going to do those positive things. And then I'm going to use these cards with my 10, 13, and 16-year-old children. We will work on emotional regulation together. It's a wonderful practice to learn with your kids, and they love cards. Picking a card, one that matters to them. And so to receive, if you're interested in the journal, in the 2 decks of cards, they come together. We only distribute the cards through our nonprofit partners. So in this case, Johnson County Mental Health Center. You make a tax-deductible donation to Friends of Johnson County Mental Health Center. We also have free videos out on the website. They're both on the Mental Health Center and on our Remarkably Resilient Together. You can scan that QR code there. Those videos will walk people through the journal. So if you want to do something like this at work or a small group or with a parenting group or maybe with your girlfriends over a glass of wine, you can watch those videos as you want, pick and choose between the 3 that are out there that help you walk through some of this material. So that is the conclusion. I know we want to leave time for, I'll just pop up our contact information, time for Q&A. And I think that goes over to you, Jamie, for Q&A.
Real quick before Jamie starts, I just also want to make sure that, we realize also that that in order to change the world, there may be people that can't make a $50 donation to Friends. And so payment is not something that should hinder your request. So if in fact we've set some money aside here at Johnson County Mental Health Center, particularly through our Friends organization, to make available some of the cards. So if for some reason you can't make the donation, then please reach out to me. There's my contact information, and I'll make arrangements for you to receive the cards in the journal.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
So Jamie, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and if there are questions that folks have, we're more than happy to answer them.
So this is a perfect time to ask questions. I want to thank Kathleen and Tim for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Kathleen, for your vulnerability and being able to share your story. That means a lot to feel safe to be able to share it. So thank you. And thank you, Tim, for coming on today and talking about how Johnson County Mental Health Center is using this. This is a perfect time to ask questions, judgment-free zone. So ask away. We have about 6 minutes. You can put it in the chat. You can also put it in the Q&A.
Oh, that's nice. We're getting lots of nice compliments. Thank you all. That's very kind. Oh, the QR code again. Yes, I'm going to screen share again. Here it comes. Oh, and the link in the chat too. I probably have to do that, don't I, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay. If you go, well, let's see. If you go
Let
to
me see if
the,
I can, let me see if I can make that happen.
okay, thanks, Tim. If
Yep.
you do go to remarkably-resilient.com, you'll land on the web page that then has a rectangle that says, click here for the Remarkably Resilient Together campaign. And you just click there, and then you'll goes right to where you can click if you want to order, or if you want to scroll down and pick up the videos. We also have a couple handouts. Oh, I should mention, CareSource, a managed care organization. I happen to their client. They opened up 2 seats for my sister Karen and I to get certified in their Tufts University's Project Hope, Healthy Outcomes from Positive Experiences. So we just put 2 handouts on the website with regard to that. And when I work again I'm getting ready to work with Topeka Correctional Facility, the women's prison in Topeka. When you balance those adverse experiences and add those positive experiences, that can help build resilience in anybody. But particularly, Hope is designed to build resilience in children that are going through adversity. And then we worked with Tufts University, my sister and I, and case managers at Johnson County Corrections, and we're able to then develop a tailored Project Hope handout for individuals that are incarcerated. And Tufts University has dropped that on their website and attributed that to the work we did here in Johnson County. So we just want you to know those resources are out there. They're free. They're available on that website.
So we do have a couple of questions. Someone asked, once a donation is made, how do we pick up the materials?
Yeah,
That was the first
in
question.
that they'll be sent to you. You could certainly pick them up here, but we would mail them to you. So that's the easiest way to do it.
Then Kathleen, somebody would like to know, where do they find the videos?
If you go to the remarkably-resilient.com, if you click on that Remarkably Resilient Together square, it'll take you to our Remarkably Resilient Together page. And down at the bottom, it says, how do you use this? And how do you use it? We'll have 4 videos. One is my sisters and my lived experience story that Johnson County uses in their Trauma 101 training. That is open to any of you to use. And Sharon and Karen and I are willing to, we just can zoom in if you've got Q&A, and then you'll see the next 3 videos are Remarkably Resilient Together. One's about the Harnish story, Harnish sisters. One is about the trauma and neuroscience, and one of them is about using the materials. So that's how you get to those.
Okay, and then somebody would like to know, do you work in Jackson County?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have several favorite clients over there, but I just finished up Maddie Rhodes Center, working with Maddie Rhodes Center. Love that organization.
And then we have someone that has asked, how do you get over the thinking that your trauma wasn't trauma because it didn't or doesn't fall into traditional, and what you think is worse, actual trauma? I went through something at work that at this point I'm having trouble getting over because others handled it okay.
You know, Sharon and Karen and I go back to that original definition. The SAMHSA definition of trauma is just beautifully graceful, because my sisters and I all had, in sometimes, the exact same thing happen to us, right? The exact same event, but the way that it impacted each of us and our experience of it was uniquely different. And that wonderful grace, trauma is individual and it's how you experience it and how it affected you. And that is trauma. It just is. And it is that definition, I hope, gives you some grace. It does for Sharon and Karen and I when we talk about experience or events that we experienced very differently and had very different effects. Tim, what would you?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's individual. And I think that the way that we can tell that is that we all experience different events differently. So Kathleen and I may be at the same in the same place. We may be together, and something happens, and it could be traumatic for Kathleen, and for me, it could cause me a little stress or anxiety. But it doesn't necessarily reach that level of a traumatic experience. We base that on yourself. I mean, if you believe and you have and you've had experienced the negative impacts, then it's traumatic to you, and that is the only person that can define that, is you. No one else can. So I think that's in essence when Kathleen says that the definition provides some grace. That's in essence what I think it says.
And quick little thing, so a certificate of attendance is in the chat along with the,
Oh, you just went on mute, Jamie.
thank you. So certificate of attendance is located in the chat. It's in there a couple of times along with the password. And I know we're over time, but Kathleen, there was one more question you did respond, but it just came to us. So I'm going to ask it out here. So they'd love to hear how this may be applicable to in neurodiverse populations.
My son is neurodiverse, and I must say to you that teaching him and us learning regulation together has been life-changing for both of us, because it also has allowed him a whole other set of tools for managing his anxiety, because that feels very much the same to him. He goes into complete panic mode. That's his anxiety that happens. Also practicing self-care, where his negative talk sometimes, and the negative talk he heard, he had a tough time through the school system. Often our neurodiverse children do. Zach did. But that self-talk that can happen about he doesn't deserve it, he's not worth it, he didn't. And so really helping him understand that self-care is critical for everyone. So I must say it's been life-changing, and my son and I have learned this together. And that's at least my personal experience with it. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, last question, because it just came in, I said yes. Excellent, thank you. The last question was, somebody was wondering if they could contact one or both of you to discuss how they might get involved in some healing from trauma movements.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Either or
Absolutely.
both.
There you go. Okay, so anonymous attendee, they said yes, you can definitely contact them. Okay, and with that, thank you guys so very much.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
rest of your week and weekend.
Okay, bye. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.